This is going to be a little bit of a shorter video and is going to piggyback slightly off of the last video I did. In the last video, I talked about Gnosticism and its tendency to really separate the material world from the spiritual world, seeing the material world as inherently bad and seeing the spiritual world as the thing that we must attain. We must transcend this fleshly body. We must transcend this material world, and we must transcend into the spiritual. And I was talking about how this has snuck back into a lot of Protestant theology, with the rapture being one of the more Gnostic, very apparently Gnostic in its approach to getting out of escaping the world, and how this has also led to a desacramenting everything around us, where everything around us is seen in discontinuity with the spiritual realm. And one of the things that ties into this, and it's a question that I get a lot from people, is why in the world do these ancient traditions worship in such strange, overdone, ritualistic ways? Doesn't it seem to be just unnecessary to have to bing a bell right when the consecration happens and shake incense everywhere you go and process up and down? It seems redundant. It seems to be super ritualistic. And why is it necessary? That's the fundamental question. Why is it necessary? I want to just point out that one of the things that I have noticed, and this is my own personal journey in theology, so you can take it or leave it, but one of the things I've noticed is that when I read the Old Testament and I read about ancient Judaism and how they worshiped, I am struck by how, by today's standards, it would have been incredibly legalistic. I mean, you can't go into this room unless you do this specific task. You have to clean yourself in this particular way for this particular act. You have to sacrifice this particular animal at this particular time. You have to do this with this particular body part. The list is endless, and you go, oh my goodness, how in the world did anybody function under a system like this? So legalistic. And then you read in the fine print, "Thus saith the Lord." Now, isn't that interesting? We read the Old Testament, and we see this very elaborate system of worship, this very elaborate way of worshiping Yahweh. And it's commanded by Yahweh himself. So what do we make of that? And furthermore, is it then so hard to believe that when Christianity begins, it naturally sees itself as the continuation and fruition of Judaism, and therefore worships in like manner? I think the logic is pretty sound. Here is how God wants to be worshipped. Here we are in this new covenant. We should take these things and worship him in continuity with these things, but reflecting the theology of the new covenant. What I think is even more strange is that a Protestant can read the Old Testament and see how God commanded himself to be worshipped, and then go to a church where you have a rock band playing and you have a motivational speaker standing on the stage and feel like that is an accurate depiction of Christianity. Brothers and sisters, it seems to me that in our pursuit of culture, in our pursuit of trying to appeal to the world around us, we've lost sight of the fact that it's not "thus saith mankind," it's "thus saith the Lord." And we've lost sight of the reality that it is not culture, that we are trying to appease or culture that we're trying to engage. It is the worship of the triune God. That is why we gather. The church goes out into the world because the world... Sorry, let me rephrase that. The church goes out into the world because the church is fed by the Spirit of God. The church is where God ministers to his people, and the people receive the union with him so that they are strengthened to go out and disciple the nations. But the church is not a place to invite the nations to come be discipled. The church revolves around worship and communion with God. He is the focus, and the strengthening of those who belong to him is its purpose. And so when we frame it this way, when we stop trying to look out into culture and say, what are they into these days? And we start looking to, what does God want? High church, ancient liturgies are what naturally flow from that. Because we see what God wanted in the Old Testament. And when we get to the New Testament and the New Testament era, there's no indication that the way that we worship him should change. All that's indicated is we're under a new covenant. So the veil is removed, the Holy of Holies is opened up, but you'll notice that the Orthodox churches, they still have the threefold design for their churches. And yet it's designed specifically to show that the Holy of Holies is now approachable. That's the symbolism there. The Holy of Holies is now opened up, and we are to go up and receive Christ, to receive the one who is tabernacled amongst us, to receive God who became flesh. For the veil has been removed, and his presence has now come out to dwell among his people. And so I think that as Protestants, this ties into the last video with beauty and all that, but as Protestants, we have the tendency to just look at what is the most practical? Why all this extra stuff? And what that misses is that this extra stuff is not for God. We're not required by God to wear these vestments or to process. Protestants are right to say, why is this necessary? That's not the point. These are things God has gifted to us to communicate something to us about himself, to therefore elevate our worship. And I think that's beautiful. God doesn't need water to save somebody. God doesn't need bread and wine to make himself present. But he chooses to use physical means, tangible things, to communicate himself to us that our worship might be elevated. And so in the same way, these robust liturgies that have their roots in Judaism communicate the person of God to us, for us, that we might be elevated in our experience and worship of him. And so I think we're asking the wrong question. Why is this necessary? Instead of asking why it's necessary, ask, what does this mean? Why am I doing this? Because as I've said in previous videos, you can't escape ritual. So it's not about should I have rituals? Should I have a liturgy? It's about what am I conveying through this liturgy? What are these things doing to me? How are they helping me to draw my eyes heavenward? And ultimately, is this what God wants for his people? Because he knows his people, and he knows what we need so that we can experience him as the ultimate goodness. So let that be an encouragement to you. It helped me. It drew me to the ancient church when I saw this continuity between Judaism and Christianity, something I think we should see continuity between. So I hope that encourages you as well. And with that, Talk to you next time. Thanks for watching that video. If you like the work that I do, please consider becoming a patron for as little as $5 a month and signing up for my email newsletter. It's free. Both of those things can be found in the links below in the description. Thank you so much for watching.